Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Present-day Alexandria, Egypt. We're at one of this ancient city's most popular attractions. Curiosity seekers explore a makeshift museum outside a crumbling building with broken shutters. Newspaper clippings from a century ago tell a sensational story of a series of murders in Alexandria, while photographs identify the killers as a pair of dark-eyed, unsmiling women.
I am one of those women. My name is Raya Ali Hammam.
And I am the other. I am Sakina Ali Hammam.
Raya and Sakina Ali Hammam, sister serial killers, cold-hearted and bloodthirsty, who went after women for their gold. At least, that's what the newspaper clippings say.
We used to live in that house in Al-Labbain. It's not far from the port, on the Mediterranean Sea.
How strange that house is now a museum. It's where we buried some of the bodies, you know?
And where those bodies were discovered. A discovery that turned into a nationwide sensation. The year is now 1920. Inside the house, a labourer is opening up the floor to inspect the plumbing. He's preparing the place for a new tenant, not long after Raya and Sakina moved out. A stench invades his nostrils. Digging further into the ground under the tiles, he finds something soft, grabs hold, and he pulls out a human arm. A woman's arm.
Nabawiyya bint Ali. We got decent money off her. She was wearing 15 Egyptian pounds worth of gold. Remember, Sakina?
I don't really like to think about Nabawiyya. The men did a bad job hiding her body.
Agreed. Sometimes, I think if no one had ever found Nabawiyya, they might not have found any of them.
Ever wonder what history's most famous and infamous people would say if you asked them for their side of the story? Well, here's your chance. You're listening to Hindsight, an original podcast by Al Jazeera. I'm Charles Dance. This is a dramatized series based on historical events that resurrect some of the world's most memorable figures. In this episode, we meet Raya and Sakina Ali Hammam. Their names conjure up the same kind of horror and fascination in Egypt as Jack the Ripper in England or Jeffrey Dahmer in the United States. But in hindsight, were Raya and Sakina really serial killers? And their victims, who were they? The myth is that they were rich women who provoked dangerous jealousy in the hearts of the sisters. But is that the real story? After all the telling and retelling, let's start at the beginning. Far from the glittering city of Alexandria, south along the Nile River to one of the poorest parts of Egypt where the sisters were born. We begin with Raya.
I was born in a little village in Upper Egypt, around 1875. Our father was Ali ibn Muhammad Hammam, but the real boss of the family was my mother, Zainab bint Mustafa. She was the one who kept my older brother Abu al-Ala and me in line. We moved a lot, but the Nile River was always close. We always headed north, to Suhaig, to Bani Suef.
That route takes you through Egypt's Valley of the Kings, the home and eternal resting place of the likes of Tutankhamun, Ramses the Great, and Nefertiti. But this 19th century Egyptian family had little in common with the ancient dynasties.
I'm the youngest of the family, but that didn't bring me any special treatment. By the time I was born in 1885, our family lived in Bani Suef. My earliest memories are of an empty tummy, and all the work we had to do to fill it. I helped Raya with that from a young age. She taught me a lot.
Here, Sakina. The wheat goes here and the stones go here. See, we're lucky Baba was able to trade for this. We can make bread.
Raya and Sakina grew up in the middle of a great drought in Egypt. It lasted 3 decades and upended food supplies. Faced with dusty gardens, people kept picking up stakes looking for better land and jobs. That's why the sisters spent their childhoods on the move.
Life was hard, but I still had fun. When I was a teenager, I liked flirting with men. I wasn't beautiful, but I had something, you know? I suppose I needed male attention. Growing up, our father wasn't around much. Until one day when he wasn't around at all. I miss him, Raya. Where did he go?
I don't know. I haven't seen him in days. But most important, we haven't eaten in days.
Oh, you exaggerate.
Honestly, how anyone could be happy for no reason, I will never understand. I was 25
And I was 15.
when Mama led us further north to Kafr al-Zayat in the Nile Delta. It had a cotton mill.
Egypt's cotton industry was famous, but a bit past its prime by this point in the sisters' lives. Decades after its heyday, it provided little more than seasonal work for the rural families struggling to make ends meet.
My brother and I worked the mills. It was a hard grind. Just a few more hours to go now.
I couldn't face that kind of labor. I sold vegetables at the market instead with Mama.
Onions! I have onions today! Onions!
I also kept an eye out for a husband. It wasn't easy. I wasn't exactly a beauty. It took a long time, but we saved enough so that Mama could afford to open up a small cafe for the mill workers. My brother Abu Al-Ala worked with us too. The mill was too difficult for him. Having the cafe also meant we were able to eat every day. Most days, anyway.
So life got a bit better in Kafr al-Zayat. The mill and the cafe provided some stability, and the family settled down and made it their home for a decade. Still, their focus would have always been on their next meal, and eventually, Raya's mind finally settled on a new future. Or so she had hoped.
My first husband was a mill worker. I was so relieved to marry. I thought, maybe now someone would look after me, make life easier. I even got pregnant. I was nearly 35 years old by then, so I didn't think it was ever going to happen. But my happiness didn't last long. The dust at the mill was hard on my husband's lungs. He already had health problems and soon got very sick.
That's when Hasaballah came into the picture.
You are Raya. Oof. You are even older than I thought.
When it began to look like my husband wouldn't recover, I called for his younger brother, Hasaballah, to join us in Kafr al-Zayat to help, or to at least say goodbye to his brother. My poor sick husband died a month after Hasaballah's arrival. Since I was pregnant with his brother's child, the neighbors pressured Hasaballah to marry me. He agreed. I didn't know what to feel. I was grieving. I was scared. I was always scared, to be honest. And this new husband was young, only 20. But he was manly and strong with the wide shoulders.
I still can't believe you're going to marry Hasaballah. Do you even love him?
What's love got to do with it, Sakina? I need a man to take care of us. We need to eat.
Marrying your brother's widow wasn't uncommon in those days, but Raya was always embarrassed about the age difference. Even when authorities brought her in for questioning many years later, she couldn't bear to tell them the truth about her real age. For now, this woman, this future murderer, according to the stories, appeared desperate to build a family.
What am I going to do with this baby? He won't feed. He fusses so much. I think there's something wrong. I gave birth to a baby boy near the end of the 1909 cotton harvest season. He didn't make it to his first birthday.
I got married about the same time and had a baby girl. I named her Zainab, after my mother. But she died too. My husband and I divorced after that.
These hardships, the hunger and the dying babies in particular, were shared by the majority of Egyptians at the time. The country was technically doubly occupied, officially a province of the Ottoman Empire, but under the de facto control of the British since 1882, when Raya was around 7 years old. The result? No one really cared about the lower-class people of Egypt. The poverty was harsh and life was cheap, a kind of life that hardens hearts. You could see how people may be pushed to desperation. Of course, not everyone hardened by life becomes serial killers. However, out of desperation, many women turn to prostitution.
Look, there were only so many ways a woman could make money. I was no virgin, and pay from the cafe and the mill was poor.
Sakina could have just gotten remarried.
Well, I didn't want to marry just anyone. Anyway, I met a madame who had a brothel in the nearby city of Tanta, so I went to work for her. I wouldn't say I liked it or anything, but it was easier money than the mill.
Prostitution was legal and regulated in British-controlled Egypt. And as part of her license, Sakina had to get regular medical checkups for venereal diseases. She contracted something and ended up in hospital.
Horrible place, crowded and smelly. But it's also where I met Ahmed. He was my nurse. He became one of my great loves.
Oh, Ahmed, I feel like I'm the luckiest lady in the world.
We made a pact to leave Tanta together and head for the best city in Egypt, as soon as I was well. In 1913, we moved to Alexandria. It was so exciting. The cafes, the wine, they even had streetcars.
The ancient city of Alexandria, the pearl of the Mediterranean, offered rich history, golden beaches, grand architecture, and bustling markets. Poor rural Egyptians fleeing the drought arrived in droves in the hope of a better life.
Ahmed and I had to live in the poorest part of town, but I didn't care. We were in love. One of the first things we did in Alexandria was get married. We worked at whatever jobs we could find. Him at the port, and I sold sugarcane. And yes, once in a while I entertained the client, just when we needed the money. Ahmed didn't like it, but he loved me. Besides, we had to eat. It was enough. Then the war began.
The Great War started in 1914, pitting the Ottoman Empire against the British Army across the Middle East, including the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt. The war meant conscription of Egyptian laborers, martial law, and a serious disruption to the cotton industry.
For us back in Kafr al-Zayat, that meant less work at the mill for Hasaballah. He was still my husband. He stayed with me after the baby died. I thought he was kind to do so.
Not the first time Raya gave Hasaballah more credit than he deserved.
Hasaballah, you are still in the exact spot I left you this morning. What happened to your shift at the mill? And what is that smell? Are you smoking
Oh, shut up, you old woman. You are just lucky I'm here. Now, what is for dinner? Your daughter and I are hungry. Oh, shut that baby up too. Our son needs feeding.
Mahmoud was my latest baby. Just tiny at the time. I had 4 children with Hasaballah in our first 7 years of marriage. My daughter Badi'a was the only one to make it past her first birthday. I had hoped that being married would make life easier, but I was wrong. Look, I don't like to admit this, but Hasaballah was lazy.
A rare admission indeed.
Okay, look, he worked at the mill, but only when he felt like it, which wasn't much. He'd often take off with our brother, refuse to tell me where he was going, and then come back with all sorts that he told me to sell. One time it was furniture. Hasaballah, what are we going to do with all these chairs? I suspected he was stealing, but I never saw any money from the items I sold. But I did have to pay a heavy price for his crimes. Hello? No, Hasaballah's not here. I don't know anything about the cafe being robbed. These chairs? We bought them at the market. They didn't believe me, and neither did the judge.
Raya took the blame for Hasaballah, but when she goes into prison for her absent husband, she goes with little Mahmoud at least until he's weaned. As Raya sits in prison with her baby, Sakina gets an unwelcome visitor at her new home in Alexandria. More on that after the break.
I'm Samantha Johnson, and I'm here to tell you about Now You Know, a new show from Al Jazeera. Now You Know is dedicated to amplifying women's voices, stories, and at times, some pretty uncomfortable topics. This is a safe space where we go all in to offer you information and inspiration. Check out Now You Know, a new show from Al Jazeera. Find us on Al Jazeera's YouTube channel or listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to Raya and Sakina, Egypt's sisters in crime.
Your stupid sister is in jail.
Hasaballah tracked me down in Alexandria with their daughter Badi'a. Well, that's bad news. But how is this my problem?
Your sister is in jail with our baby and we have nowhere to go.
I wanted to say no to Hasaballah. But this was family, for better or worse. Besides, there was room at our place. Ahmed lost his job at the port and had to leave for the front in Sinai to work on the supply lines for the British Army.
About 1 million Egyptians were conscripted, manning the front against the Ottoman Empire that had sided with the Germans in the war. The British gave the Egyptians the worst jobs, digging trenches and retrieving bloated bodies from the First World War's infamous no-man's land between the trenches.
A few months after Hasaballah showed up with my niece, prison authorities sent word that Mahmoud was weaned. Hasaballah went to fetch him and brought him back to live with us. I did what I could to keep a roof over our heads and food in our bellies. I rented out a room to prostitutes that I knew, and yeah, I stole. Hasaballah, of course, did nothing. And then, a few weeks after baby Mahmoud arrived, Raya showed up.
Hello, Sakina. How are my babies?
At first, I thought she would be a help, but she was the opposite. Raya never wanted to leave her room.
Alexandria was loud and full of people who looked at me like I was a stranger. They treated all of us from Upper Egypt like foreigners.
Assalamu alaikum. I've got some bread.
Did you bring fuel?
Raya, I gave you money for that. Why didn't you get it?
It's too loud out there, Sakina. This place frightens me.
Raya and the baby weren't doing so good.
My only son and you couldn't keep him alive. What good are you?
Nothing prepares you for when you see your baby lying, still and purple. But I knew I didn't have the luxury to mourn. I was determined to give Hasaballah a son. So I got pregnant again, but the baby girl was stillborn. That broke me, body and soul. I thought for sure Hasaballah would leave me now. I went to bed and stayed there.
Here, sister. Does this feel better?
Thank you, Sakina.
It was a tough time. Ahmed was still away at the front, and there just wasn't enough decent work in Alexandria. Okay, so if I trade the sugar cane for wheat, that's our meal. I get money for fuel if I work a bit at the cafe. But what am I going to do with little Badia? She can come with me to the cafe, I suppose. And then my mother and brother showed up. No one in Kafr Zayat wanted anything to do with them because of their affiliation with Hasaballah and his crimes. With so many people under one roof, I had to find a new home. After quite a bit of searching, I found just the right place in the nearby neighborhood of Al-Khawas. It was still in the poor part of town, but I was used to that. It was crowded and the streets were narrow.
And it stank.
You get used to the smells. Anyway, I found a flat on the ground floor with 2 rooms and a common area. I imagined each sister with her husband in a room, while my brother and mother could stay in the living area. Ahmed was coming home from the front lines soon. I couldn't wait. I saved my money to throw a party for him. A whole pound. I hid it in my little room.
She didn't hide it well enough. Hasaballah found it. Habibi, where are you going? Wait, what are you doing with Sakina?
Mind your business.
It was a terrible betrayal. Raya, the money I've been saving up for Ahmed's return, it's gone. Hasaballah took it. I know it.
Don't be silly. He hasn't been here all day. He's been at work, providing for his family. What could I do? He was a thief, lazy and selfish, but he was my husband.
I was furious. I needed to get away. When Ahmed came home from the front lines, I suggested we go live in his village for a while. He was only too happy to say yes. No chance of me taking in clients there. We left the place I found in Al-Khawas to my family. I honestly didn't know how they'd cope, but I didn't care.
When Sakina left, I had no choice but to put my grief for all my babies aside. Whatever money Hasaballah made, he kept for himself. My brother was almost as useless as Hasaballah. My mother was getting old, and my daughter Badia was still too young to work. I worked at a vegetable market.
Onions for sale! Onions! Onions! Onions for sale!
But the little money I was making there wasn't fit to live on. So I took advantage of Sakina's old room and opened a brothel.
Meanwhile, village life wasn't working out for Sakina and Ahmed. He was soon out of work and the couple had no choice but to return to Alexandria. Ahmed decided to take a British military job again at the front lines, and Sakina once again lived with her family. But a lot had changed in the time the sisters were apart.
What on earth? Raya?
Well, I thought about the brothel you worked at in Tanta. And I figured, why not do it here? We have these rooms. So there I was. Me, the dumb sister. The one who always followed everyone else, managing the family's secret brothel in our home. We had to keep the business a secret because I didn't get a license. Hasaballah was embarrassed about living off women, so we kept it quiet. I had a talent for recruiting. We called in 3 local women whenever clients showed up, and I'd get a tidy 25% of their earnings.
Since Ahmed was back at the front, I thought it'd make sense to join forces with Raya. My husband wouldn't have liked it, but frankly, he couldn't really make enough money to look after me. I needed to make money. I could also recruit for the same amount. What bothered me though was Hasaballah.
His job was to keep an eye on things, I guess. He helped.
He held himself to the prophets, you mean?
All the profit is mine. After all, I am Raya's husband.
I looked after you and your family. Certainly I deserve something. Raya, don't you have anything to say? I single-handedly saved her from starvation and took care of her children when she was in prison. And all I got back from her was nothing. Not a single word from my sister who...
I was scared to lose him. I'm not like Sakina. I don't have a magic power over men.
I was furious. I moved out and got my own little room a few streets away. I got a job in a cafe, and to help make ends meet, I rented out my room to a couple of prostitutes. And I had a few clients as well. I used to pick them up at the cafe, as did other women, until the neighbors complained. I got swept up in a police raid. I was able to convince them that I only worked in the cafe. But the whole thing shook me and put me in a dark mood. And when I was in that kind of mood, I drank. I used to dwell on the hurt my own sister had inflicted, and that wretched good-for-nothing husband of hers. I gave them no reason to hate me after everything I'd done for them. But still, every time I saw them, I could feel Hasaballah's hatred and my sister's awkwardness. I knew I was a complication. I drank one last glass of wine for courage and headed for the police department. You want to know the address of a secret brothel? The police swarmed my family's home. They gave Hasaballah and Raya a choice. Either make the brothel legitimate or leave the neighborhood for good.
Hasaballah chose the latter, but Raya was reluctant.
It was a pity, because I realized that I was actually quite good at running a business. I had a head for making money, although it was hard to keep it with Hasaballah.
I pretended to be outraged by the police raid and even helped Raya pack up.
Do you have any idea who ratted us out?
No, not at all.
And so an untruth helps to bring the sisters back together again. It wasn't easy at first. They had to move a lot once neighbors discovered the sisters were running a brothel. The shouting didn't help either. Sakina and Hasaballah were constantly at each other's throats. Adding to the drama, Sakina grew tired of Ahmed's long stints at the front, so she took in a boyfriend.
His name was Muhammad Abdel. I adored him. We even got tattoos together. I got one on my hand which read, Muhammad Abdelal is my darling. He got a tattoo of a woman holding a knife in one hand and a rose in the other, with the name Sakina bint Ali underneath. I loved Ahmed, but we were apart more than we were together. And he just wouldn't give up on this idea that he could provide for me. Abdelal was different. He was okay with prostitution and even offered to help Hasaballah with security. But he said no.
Hasaballah was furious about Abdelal. They weren't married. What if people found out? Too much attention.
The problem wasn't my love life. The real problem was neighbors kept finding out about our business. After we were exposed, the men joined the workers' legions and left Alexandria for the front lines.
Sakina and I set out to find the perfect house, and we found it.
The camp house. It was a bit out of town, but it was right next to the British Army base. Plenty of customers.
And no neighbors to report us. Business was good. Very good. But nothing good lasts forever.
In 1919, a nationalist uprising against British colonial rule turned into a revolution in Egypt. Public discontent over the British occupation resulted in widespread protests, strikes, and demonstrations. This had a deep effect on the sisters. Not that they had any nationalist feelings. Rather, British soldiers were too busy putting down a revolution to come to Camp House.
I got busy recalibrating our business model.
Raya had a talent for attracting young women devastated by the poverty they were all suffering. She was a good recruiter and expanded her business at an impressive rate.
One big brothel depending on one kind of clientele, that wasn't going to work anymore. We needed to spread out, make it harder to shut us down completely at one time. I set my sights on a series of rooms in different houses in one neighborhood.
I was all in. I knew Ahmed would never accept it, so I finally cut my ties and divorced him. It was sad, but I had Abdelal, and he wanted to work with us, so we married. That shut Hasaballah up.
With the men back from the front, the two husbands were in charge of security and alcohol for the clients. A local criminal named Arabi Hassan joined us. Everyone knew Arabi, and everyone was afraid of him.
We wanted our clients to really enjoy themselves. So we joined forces with a drug dealer named Abdel Razik. He helped out with security too.
The only problem was my husband. He spent all of the money I made on himself.
Still, by 1919, our operation was a fine-tuned machine with roles, responsibilities, plus an army of street girls. All working class, just trying to survive. We were unstoppable.
Until they weren't. More on that after this break.
The Inside Story podcast dissects, analyzes, and helps define major global stories. We get into the details with experts who explain how policies affect people. The Inside Story podcast by Al Jazeera. Find us wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome back. Once again, political turmoil upended the sisters' lives. British forces were doubling down on a revolution that wouldn't let up. They imposed curfews and set up checkpoints. All bad for business.
Profits dropped again. Raya took it really hard. Because of Hasaballah, she had no savings. She began to get jealous of our prostitutes, who were quite frankly glittering with their riches.
Back then, people didn't use banks so much in Egypt. Women in particular. They would buy gold and silver jewelry and wear it. They wore their wealth. This is where the real story of Raya and Sakina starts to contradict the myth. In many versions of this macabre story, we hear that the victims were the rich women of Alexandria. That wasn't the case. Not for the first murdered woman.
My name is Khadra Muhammad Al-Lami. I was no fancy lady with a house on the sea. I was a prostitute, and I worked for the sisters. I think my fate was sealed shortly before I was murdered in December 1919. I was standing outside the brothel with Raya, hoping for a customer.
Wow, look at all your bracelets.
Yes, well, business was good, remember? I'll probably have to sell one soon. I'm barely making anything with all this trouble. A few days later, Raya told me to meet a customer at her house. I found it strange that Urabi, Hasaballah, Abdelal, and Abdelrazik were all there too.
Come, Khadra. Have some cognac.
Oh, don't mind if I do. So I drank, and drank some more. Raya and Sakina didn't stick around for long. I don't think so anyway. I was getting so drunk, I felt my eyes starting to close. And that's when the men were on me.
What are you doing? What is this? Stop!
I could feel two of them pinning me down. My feet, my arms, my chest. They tried to take my bracelets, but I fought back.
No! No!
And then suddenly, someone was on top of me with a wet cloth and held it over my face until I took my last breath.
They wasted no time once she was dead. Raya fetched a hatchet, they opened the platform floors and began to dig her grave. They stripped her of her jewelry and then laid her body in a cold, dark hole. A few days later, Khadra's son filed a missing persons report. And so the first murder comes to pass. Not of a rich woman, but of a prostitute. The sisters found a jewelry dealer who would buy Khadra's gold. Victim 2. Nazla Abulil, girlfriend to Arabi, the criminal crew employed for security. Nazla had been unfaithful, and Arabi was furious. The reason didn't seem to matter much. The group was running out of the money they got from selling the jewelry of their first victim. Nazla's death followed a similar pattern. She's lured into one of the rooms at Raya's house. The gang gave her plenty to drink. The men held her down and suffocated her with a wet cloth.
Raya and I were in the room when they did this to Nazla. I peed my pants.
I just ran away.
Raya and Sakina could have turned the men in and saved many women, but they didn't. There was much money to be made from their deaths.
The next woman was Aziza. Oh God, it makes me sick to think about it.
Personally, I found it got easier, especially if I didn't have to watch. Numbers 4, 5, 6, and 7 all went pretty smoothly.
The women had names: Nabaweya, Nabaweya bin Goma, and Zanuba. Number 6's identity remains unknown. Some had families too, and they were asking questions. So were the police.
Yes? Oh, I don't know where she is. Sakina! The police are here looking for Zanuba. They say she was last seen with us.
Oh, you know Zanuba. She's probably off drinking and dancing. Okay, goodbye. Look, my sister and I had to stick with the men, you know?
I certainly couldn't tell on my husband.
We were family. And besides, we didn't actually kill anyone.
A common Egyptian proverb sums this moment up.
دخول الحمام مش زي خروج.
Entering a bathroom is not like leaving it.
In other words, the sisters were in deep water. But they made no move to disentangle them from the murders. If there was any remorse, it may have come from Sakina. Many of these women were her friends, like victim number 11, Nabawaya bint Ali.
Hello, Nabawaya. Alhamdulillah. Thank God you're here.
She came to give me cupping treatment for my sore back. Oh, my heart.
Ah, you're a miracle worker, Nabawaya. Hasaballah, what are you doing here? Get out!
Oh, so sorry, Sakina. I didn't know.
Get out already. Ignore him, Nabawaya. Keep going. Hey, Hasaballah, what are you doing?
Hasaballah and Urabi held her down and put a cloth over her terrified face.
No, not again. I'm so sorry, Nabawaya.
I couldn't watch. I got up and ran out. I needed a glass of wine.
It was getting harder to disguise all of the money we were making. It didn't help that Sakina was making no secret of her riches, spending it on new clothes and good wine.
I had to make myself feel better about it. I didn't have the stomach for all this death. Unlike Raya, she got colder and more calculating with everyone.
Both sisters were now on a downward spiral that lasted 11 months, well into 1920. With every death, all the way to number 17, the sisters lured the victims into one of their rented rooms. Once they were killed, the sisters sold the gold to a jeweler who knew better than to ask too many questions. In the end, they got more than £100, a small fortune in that time. But the bodies were piling up, right under the family's feet, under the rooms they rented across the Laban district. That includes a place they had to vacate because of complaints from neighbors. They left the body of Nabawaya bint Ali behind, right under the floorboards. That might have been their undoing. On the 14th of November 1920, a labourer by the name of Ahmed Morsi was renovating the home for a new tenant. Nothing could have prepared him for what he pulled out from underneath the tiles. A human arm.
We needed to act fast. I gathered up our group and we got all our stories straight. I started disposing of any remaining evidence that could link us to the body. Clothes, any bits of jewelry we hadn't sold.
They couldn't move fast enough. The police investigation first led them to Sakina, as she was officially the former tenant.
I told them my room was often used for naughty activities by other men, which was true.
She was clever in throwing them off the scent in interrogation, but she was careless in another important way. She was seen in public wearing one of the victims' shawls. The police investigation led them to Raya's place next. They began to question her too. She buckled under the pressure.
What do you want from me?
Raya admitted there was a body buried beneath the wooden platform. She insisted her husband had nothing to do with anything and blamed the thug, Urabi. The police weren't convinced. They searched Raya's rooms and found more bodies underneath the floorboards. They started to investigate other places the sisters had lived in over the years. More bodies. Police pressed both Sakina and Raya for answers.
The police got to Raya. She told them about another body. They also found jewelry receipts.
The noose was tightening.
They were also talking to the men.
We all started to turn against each other. Look, I don't know about that woman. Never saw her. Ask my sister.
I actually got the shawl from Hasaballah. He must have taken it off Khadra. What do I know?
I don't know how my wife and her sister knew these women. I have nothing to do with any of that.
When the police found the brass stamp carrying Hasaballah's name near one of the graves, I knew he was in trouble.
In the end, me, Abdel Al, Raya, and Hasaballah confessed. Urabi and Abdel Razik said they were innocent.
They were all accused of murder and theft. Led into the courtroom, Raya and Sakina stood poised, eyes steady. They confirmed their names and stuck by their confessions. Loyalty forgotten now, they said it was the men who did the killing.
We were mere spectators who provided food and drinks.
We are not killers.
Our attorney pointed out that no witnesses saw us commit the killings. He argued for a reduced sentence. He said that the men had influence over us and that we had always stuck to our story ever since we confessed. We were telling the truth.
At the same time, the men recanted their confessions, saying they'd been forced. If the group had stuck to the truth, perhaps fate would have been kinder to Raya and Sakina. But instead, the blame landed on the women. The Egyptian press started demonizing them as soon as they were arrested. One reporter only ever referred to the sisters, even calling Hasabala Raya's husband. The verdict came down on the 16th of May, 1921. Guilty of murder and theft. The sentence, execution. The jeweler Ali Muhammad Hassan received a prison sentence. At 7:30 in the morning on Wednesday the 21st of December 1921, a black ensign flew over Hadrap prison. A woman, two women, were about to be executed for the first time in modern state Egypt.
I wore the red execution clothes and the white hat. My steps were steady, but I was tired. They asked me what my final wish was, and I asked to see my daughter. I was denied. Badia, my daughter, I leave you in the hands of God.
Raya was hung for 30 minutes. Her heart continued to beat for 2 minutes. Just after 8 in the morning, it was Sakina's turn.
I had something to say. I don't care much about the hanging. I am tough and brave. As the hangman was tying my hands, I said, "Do you think I'm going to escape or stop the hanging with my hands?" Yes, I am a woman, but a tough one.
Sakina was hung for 30 minutes. Her heart continued to beat for 4 minutes. The crowds outside cheered when they got the word that their executions were done. All 4 men, Asabala, Abdel Al, Abdel Razek, and El-Rabi, met the same fate. But those names aren't remembered the same way today. In Egypt, Raya and Sakina are the boogeymen, used as a threat by mothers of naughty children across the country. But are they monsters? They helped in the deaths. But did they deserve to die? Perhaps they were judged more for what they were, poor women willing to trade sex for money. Prostitutes defying authority was not the image the emerging modern Egypt wanted for its women. And the sisters' case came along just at a time when authorities were looking to drive home that point. In the spring and summer of 1920, headlines in Egypt were focused on the story of a string of murders in Tanta. The victims were all women, the accused, a trio of a man and 2 women, all involved in prostitution. The motive, jewelry theft. At the time, they were all painted as immoral threats to Egyptian society. Today, Egyptian plays and movies portray the sisters in turn as tragic, evil, even comedic. Many versions put the blood directly onto the sisters' hands. But they are remembered more for their tenacity in trying to overcome the desperate poverty into which they were born. Sakina's last words, "I am a strong woman," have a lasting effect. There's even a theory the sisters were actually revolutionaries, and the whole murder case was a plot by British authorities to trap them. the legend of Raya and Sakina continues to be shaped by the times of its most current telling. Hindsight is narrated by me, Charles Dance. This series was produced by South Podcasts. Their team is producer and editor Rana Dawood, editor Tala Halawa, assistant producer Basant Samhut, production assistants Heba Nabulsi and Kaula Alamori, sound design by Nuruddin Belasen, assembly sound editing by Yazan Kawas. This episode is written by Morgan Waters. Research by Rama Sabanek. Fact-checking by Rawan Samamra. Special thanks to Robin Mauja for giving us an interview. Raya is played by Leila Ghonem. Sakina, played by Farida Ragab. Extra voice is played by Ahmed Zakaria, Basant Samhut, and Lara Sameh. Recording by TVC Soho Post-Production and Blue Productions. Additional research and fact-checking by Al Jazeera and Lynn Enwin. Joe DeFrias is the executive producer of Special Projects. Ney Alvarez is Al Jazeera's head of audio. Hindsight is a historical drama podcast. All dramatized scenes and dialogue are inspired by historical events, old interviews, and in some cases, new conversations with people close to the subject.